call this Gloucester Board of Health to order. It is August 10th. It is roughly 5:35. And we are in the Harbor Masters Conference Room. And I must say before we begin the meeting that all efforts are being made to hold this meeting, provide public access to this meeting as the meeting is being held remotely. And that's the meeting, the Zoom link. Let's go around. We have two members of the board that are Zooming in, and we're going to go around introducing ourselves. So I'll start with Don.
Hi, Don Ganem, Board of Health member.
Thor.
Thor Akerley, Board of Health member.
Marco Pelazzello, Board of Health member.
Joe Rosa.
Eric Kaplan, Board of Health member.
And members of the staff. starting
Leah
with-
Leary, financial specialist.
Cindy Junker, nurse.
Leslie Whalen, sanitarian.
Chelsea Goldstein Walsh, prevention director.
Jacob Taylor, health and food inspector, also representing Bree Gray, health inspector.
Very good, thank you. Next item on the agenda is public oral communication. That's an opportunity for any member of the public to speak for up to 3 minutes on an item not on the agenda. See anyone, Lee?
No, I do not.
Okay, the next item is the approval of the July 13th meeting minutes as well as separately. Let's do them separately. July 13th minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of July 13th.
Any discussion, any edits, amendments, changes? No? All in favor? Don?
Aye.
Thor? I think you're muted, Thor.
Aye, sorry about that.
Marco? Yeah. Aye. Joe Rosa, aye.
Eric Kaplan, yes.
So the meeting of July 13th are approved unanimously. And lastly, we also have the meeting, the special meeting of July 18th and the minutes thereof.
I move that we accept the meeting, July 18th meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, changes? All in favor? Don?
Yes.
Thor, yes.
Marco?
Marco, yes.
Joe Rosa, yes.
Eric, yes.
The July 13th minutes are, July 18th minutes are accepted as well. Next item is the committee reports by members of the staff. We can start with Jake.
Yep. So in the month of July, we had 3 calls and complaints, 2 of which called for inspection, further inspections. We had 32 regular restaurant inspections and 9 events inspected. We had the Magnolia Farmers Market, the Annisquam Farmers Market. We had the first annual Magnolia Block Party. Happy Valley, a local business, had Customer Appreciation Day where they brought food trucks in. We had Food Truck Tuesdays at the Maritime Center, the weekly Thursday Harbor Loop concert series. We had the Schooner Rendezvous, which basically like a mini schooner fest and everything like that. A couple boats came in with vendors and whatnot. And of course, we had the 4th of July Horribles Parade, which was run a little differently this year, opposed to just having all the vendors and everybody on the boulevard. They tried to disperse them throughout the parade route and whatnot.
Just make it more interesting for you.
Oh, yeah, a little bit more driving around, but because of the weather and everything, the fireworks and the concert were delayed an additional week. So the following week, we ended up having the fireworks and the concert and everything down on the boulevard. And then we had the Annisquam Sea Fair over on Leonard Street in Annisquam. Nice little band and the setup inside the community center and everything like that. So,
Been busy.
yeah, busy month this month and even busier this month coming up again. And then, yeah, I'll just roll right into Bree's report if that's
Sure, yeah.
okay. Yep. Bree ended up having 12 units and 11 buildings for the multifamily CRDs, 2 hotels, 7 complaints, a lot of complaints this month for her. So there's been a lot of running around on her behalf. one.
These are renters' complaints?
Yeah, renters complaints against the landlords and then vice versa, landlords against tenants. Recreational camps, we ended up going for a hike up into the woods up at Red Rocks. I can't remember if that was this month or last month, but we had to go up and watch, make sure the climbing gear, the helmets, the ropes and the harnesses and everything were okay. So we got to go for a nice hike through the woods and watch the instructors climb up and down the mountain. So that was actually a fun day. That's about it. She, bunch of other stuff written down, but don't want to talk out of place on her.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, thank you. Leslie,
So in your packet is
Yes.
hopefully a color sheet.
good.
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No issues that you need feedback from us on or to be aware of a special interest?
Nothing's coming to mind.
Okay, good. What's next?
Me.
Cindy,
So you have my July infectious disease investigation report. There were 36 infectious disease investigations. For the vaccine clinics, I did not hold a clinic in July, but I held a clinic today and I ran out of vaccine.
wow,
Yes, so I gave the rest of our Shingrix. We are ordering 40 more doses. I had a lot of walk-ins that I couldn't take, so I took all the people that pre-registered. I gave out 6 doses of the Moderna bivalent COVID vaccine today. I have my schedule for the fall planned. I'm doing YMCA where I will offer flu, Shingrix, hopefully Tdap by then. And we'll still have the Moderna bivalent at that time because I don't think the new booster is going to be out until mid-late October. And then, so that's on 9/21. And on 10/26, I'm also having another clinic at YMCA where I'll be offering all of the same and maybe the new COVID booster if it's available. I have my elderly housing flu clinics all set up. They will be the week of September 25th through the 28th at all 5 public housing sites. I do not have anything set up for the schools yet for the students because the state has not told me when I will be receiving my free vaccine for people under 19. I have a date for the senior center, but it is still be determined. I'm waiting for them to let me know what's the best date and time for them, and to be determined for city hall staff as well.
so Cindy, you mentioned you ran out of vaccine, was that the shingles vaccine?
I did run out of shingles vaccine today.
How many doses delivered?
So all I had left in my supply was 11 today. And they were like all, yeah, I could have given out 30,
Wow,
but that's all I had. And because it was changing of the fiscal year, I'm waiting for the vaccine to,
The POs.
yeah, POs to open up. But as soon as we can, we will order that and get it in, and it'll be available for our next clinic.
that's good that people are aware.
I have looked into the new vaccine, the new RSV vaccine for people 60 years and older. And the only company that has theirs for sale so far was GSK, and that is running $257.60 a dose for me. So I'm gonna wait until other companies, Sanofi hasn't come out with theirs, it's coming soon, just to see what the price will be, and then I will order one of the best prices. And I'm also ordering Tdap so that I can offer that to new parents, grandparents of any new infants that will be offered, so keep the infants safe.
Yes, indeed, good. So Chelsea, so I should preface this by saying Chelsea has, together with her staff, been analyzing what is typically a yearly survey of youth risk behavior. And so I asked her at a meeting to go through it with us in a summary fashion, because I think it's also something that the public as well as the board should pay attention to.
Well, I 100% cannot take credit for the analysis of the youth risk behavior survey data. Janine Nasser, who's one of our lovely summer interns, who's been interning with the health department this summer. I believe, Janine, I see you here if you want to present the work that you've been doing with us this summer. I'll just quickly go over my report and then maybe if that's okay, jump to Janine. But I will say Janine is amazing. She is a graduate student at Emory University studying epidemiology. So she has the skills and expertise to do some deeper data analysis with our youth risk behavior survey data, and is kind enough to have spent a lot of her summer doing some of that analysis for us that we aim to use in some kind of positive community norms campaign with the youth to talk about the realities of substance use among middle and high school students, and then kind of compare that to the perception of use. And kind of Janine will obviously go into more detail. So thank you, Janine, for being here. I'll just say quickly before Janine's presentation, we have an event going on actually right now that's happening until 6 p.m. at Cape Ann Lanes. So Dan Liebert and David Tucker, our other two prevention team members, are there doing an awesome job holding down the fort. And that's an open house. So it was free bowling and pizza for any community member, but really targeting middle and high school students, mainly to invite them to learn more about the Gloucester Youth Leadership Council and then hopefully maybe join. We have our first kickoff meeting next Thursday from 5 to 6 at the YMCA. So if anyone's listening and has a middle or high school student in their lives, please encourage them to go. And other than that, I listed a bunch of stuff in my report, but I'll just highlight a couple things. With our new staff, I'm very grateful. We have David and Dan. They've been working really hard. David just created a new Gloucester Youth Leadership Council website, has boosted our social media presence greatly, which is where kids are. So we're trying to reach out to kids and parents through those channels. We have a couple events coming up that we are co-sponsoring. One of them is an author talk with Kylie Reed on August 15th at the Gloucester Stage Company. That's open to the public. She wrote the book, Such a Fun Age. And so in partnership with the Sawyer Free Library and the Gloucester Racial Justice Team, we've been elevating Black authors and kind of highlighting a couple different books written by Black authors this summer, and that's one of the books. So, okay.
It's just a sign falling
There's
down.
enough. So there's been some like book discussion groups happening throughout the summer, and then Kylie Reed will be speaking on the 15th. We have a regional social media presentation coming up on September 20th. It's at Ipswich, but it's Ipswich High School, but it's open to the community, really targeted towards parents and caregivers about the connection between social media use and teen mental health.
Yeah, I don't know if people are aware, Chelsea, but it's in Ipswich because many of your, I don't know if it's many, but certainly a major grant is a regional grant that is administered through Gloucester, through Chelsea's leadership. And Ipswich is one of the members.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. Yes, almost all of the grants that we manage are regional across 7 communities, including obviously Gloucester, Ipswich, Beverly, Danvers, Manchester, Essex, and Rockport. So while it's in Ipswich, we are really strongly encouraging everybody who's interested to attend. I will just say one more thing, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Janine. And that thing is that another author talk, Brian Lies, who is a children's author and illustrator, recently came to the summer learning program for the elementary school in Gloucester Public Schools, and that was supported through some of our grant funding. So he just came and met with the students and kind of talked about his journey and how he got to where he is and did some illustrations for them. So we were very grateful for that partnership with the schools. And that's all I have. Janine, if you have your presentation and are able to share, we would really appreciate it.
I think she's muted.
Yeah, can people hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Sorry, I have multiple desktops open, so I just wanted to make sure. Okay. And can people see my screen okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Can you see the presenter slides or like just the presentation slides?
Just the presentation.
Yeah,
Okay.
full screen.
Yeah, so my name's Janine. I've been interning this summer with the Gloucester Health Department as part of MDPH's local health department internship program. Bree took me on as my official supervisor, but a lot of the projects I've been working on this summer, or the main project of focus this summer, has been analyzing some of the data from the 2022 Youth Behavioral Risk Factor Survey for the city of Gloucester. So just to give a quick overview, I'll be talking about what the Youth Behavioral Risk Factor Survey is, what the objectives of this project have been so far. It's kind of been an iterative process, the methods I used, and then I'll be delving into the results for both middle school and high school students, talk about some takeaways and next steps, and then if there's any time for questions and feedback, I'll take those. So the purpose of the Youth Behavioral Risk Factor Survey is to monitor health behaviors and experiences among Gloucester Public School students. And the results from these surveys usually are used to help in understanding the factors that contribute to leading causes of illness, death, and disability among youth. And so the objectives of this project broadly have been to conduct statistical analyses to produce different measures of association, which John Snow Inc., they did the data collection for the Youth Behavioral Risk Factor Survey, and they produced cross tabulations and descriptive statistics for the health department, but no statistical analysis has been done. And so with these findings, hopefully they can inform some sort of health education programming and practices or social norms campaigns. So the survey was administered one day in April of 2022. So school administrators across all the Gloucester Public Schools required their students to take the survey online. And so the survey covers a lot of different topics. I'll be covering substance use and mental health today, but they ask about adverse childhood experiences, dating, violence, nutrition, sleep, a lot of different factors. And then the covariates and demographic variables. I'll mainly be sharing descriptive statistics on age, race, ethnicity, language spoken at home, and a couple of others. And then I just wrote a brief note about race and ethnicity. The racial groups that I have under the broader category of race are white, Black or African American, Asian American, Pacific Islander, American Indian, Alaskan Native, other or multiracial, Hispanic and Latino is traditionally treated as an ethnic group separate from race. But nonetheless, in my statistical analysis, I accounted for both race, ethnicity, as well as gender identity, age, and sexual orientation. And so generally measures of association, they can either be crude or adjusted for a set of variables. So crude just means I produce a measure of association between exposure and outcome, not accounting for any possible demographic variables that could bias the results in a certain direction. The results I'll be presenting today have been adjusted for these demographic variables. So hopefully that mitigates any potential systematic bias that could have been introduced if I produced or presented crude results otherwise. And then before moving forward, this is just based on some previous feedback I got from a previous presentation. I wanted to note some important things about the descriptive statistics. So first of all, descriptive statistics are not the same as like statistically significant measures of association. They're cross tabulations. And in terms of the weight that we give to these statistics, you could give some weight to them, but they're not the end all be all. There will be future iterations of this survey that are distributed. And so because Gloucester is a primarily white community, the majority of students identify as heterosexual and cisgendered. Racial, sexual, and gender minority groups have a lot of them have very low cell counts in the data set. So usually about 20 or less people for a lot of those racial minority and sexual and gender minority subgroups in both the middle school and high school data sets. But what we can do with these statistics is basically pinpoint some potentially higher risk groups that might align with some national statistics from the CDC or statewide statistics. And as future iterations of this survey are distributed, I think this gets distributed every 2 years. So the next time the survey will be distributed to students to take again will be in 2024. These stats can be compared over time to see whether the trends persist, and if they do, how can certain interventions be tailored to the populations I'm going to mention here. So we'll start off with the middle school. The middle school primarily identified as cisgendered. About 91% of students identified as either cis boys or cis girls, and then about 2% identified, or a little over 2% identified as non-binary or gender non-conforming. Sexual orientation, the majority of middle school students also identify as straight, but also just a little under a fourth of the middle school population, around a fourth, a little bit over a fourth of the middle school population identifies as LGBTQ+. So 7.6% of students identify as bisexual. And then I also included refuse to answer as a slice of the pie within these pie charts, just to show if there was any, just to indicate whether there was any discomfort around potentially answering questions related to gender identity, sexual orientation, or any of these other demographic characteristics. Ethnicity and race, like I said, I made these two separate things. So majority of the students in Gloucester in the middle schools do not identify as Hispanic or Latino. But if we move over to the race pie, again, a little over a fourth of students identify as a race other than white, or as multiracial or other. You have 11.4% of students identifying as other, 8.6% identifying as multiracial, 4.2% identifying as Black or African American, and 1.6% identifying as American Indian or Alaskan Native. And age, the majority of the people who took this survey were between the ages of 12 and 14. And then I also included language spoken at home in case people were curious. The majority of students speak English at home, but 15% of students in middle school students in Gloucester speak either Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, or another language. And then for substance use statistics, all of these statistics for the middle school students talk about lifetime use. So among the middle school students, 4.6% responded that they have used marijuana at some point in their lifetime. Among those who identify as American Indian or Alaskan Native, 22.2% noted that they have used marijuana at some point in their lifetime. And among those who identify as trans boys or men, 10% they have said they've used marijuana at some point in their lifetime. And then I'll note in my slides with a star, based on the analyses, what findings are statistically significant, what findings are not. These are just some highlights, but if anyone wants like the full tables from me, let me know. So when Chelsea and I were talking about what types of variables we wanted to look at in the survey data, one of the things she mentioned to me she was interested in looking at was how perceptions around substance use by peers influence the respondents' own use. And so what we found was respondents who think that more than half of the students in their grade have used marijuana in the last 30 days are nearly 4 times more likely to use marijuana themselves compared to those who think that none of the students in their grade have used marijuana in the last 30 days. But we find that influenced by key figures in the students' lives, mainly parents and friends, can influence whether respondents have used at any point in their life. So respondents who said that they feel their parents think it is very wrong to use marijuana are 90% less likely to use marijuana themselves compared to those who feel their parents think it's not wrong to do so. Now, as you can see, both of these findings were statistically significant. And then moving on to alcohol consumption, among the middle school student respondents, 8.9% of them have consumed alcohol. Again, among those who identify as American Indian or Alaskan Native, this time 33.3% have said that they have consumed alcohol at some point in their lifetime. Among those who identify as bisexual, 14.6% have said they have consumed alcohol at some point in their lifetime. And those who are questioning their gender identity, 41.7% said that they've consumed alcohol at some point in their lifetime. And even though the findings for alcohol consumption were not statistically significant, I think they're still relevant. Respondents who believe that half the students in their grade have consumed alcohol in the last 30 days are 3 times more likely to consume alcohol themselves compared to those who think that no students have consumed alcohol in the last 30 days. And respondents who believe that their parents think it's wrong to have 1 to 2 drinks or 1 to 2 alcoholic drinks almost daily are 80% less likely to ever consume alcohol themselves. And the final substance of interest is e-cigarettes and vape. So among middle school students, 8.4% said that they have used e-cigarettes and vape at some point in their lifetime. Among those who identify as Black or African American, 18.2% have said they have used e-cigarettes or vape at some point in their lifetime. And among those who identify as gay or lesbian, 15.4% said that they have used e-cigarettes or vape at some point in their lifetime. And then e-cigarettes and vape was an interesting question because there were additional questions in the survey that asked respondents to talk about what type of e-cigarette or vape they used and how they acquired it. So the most commonly type of e-cigarette or vape that was used among the middle school students was flavored tobacco or nicotine. Otherwise, most of the students used flavored tobacco and marijuana, flavored tobacco, marijuana, and potentially some sort of other tobacco product. But there was also a good chunk of students that did not know what they were using. And then in terms of how middle school students acquired their e-cigarettes or vape, the majority of them, the options that were available were that they either got it from a friend, family member, or someone else, they bought it themselves, they took it from the store or another person, or they got them some other way. Social media was one of the proposed ways that middle school students could have acquired it at a previous meeting. So the majority of students said that the majority of respondents who said that they have used e-cigarettes or vape at some point in their lifetime said that they got the vape some other way, but otherwise they typically got it from a friend, family member, or someone else. And then respondents who feel that their parents think it is very wrong to use e-cigarettes or vape are 39% less likely to use e-cigarettes or vape themselves compared to those who feel that their parents think it is not wrong to use e-cigarettes or vape. And then respondents who feel their friends think it's wrong to use e-cigarettes or vape are up to 91% less likely to use e-cigarettes or vape themselves compared to those, sorry, this should be friends, compared to those who feel their friends think it's wrong. Or it is not wrong to use e-cigarettes or vape. And this was a statistically significant association. So we see that the influence of friends sometimes takes more precedent than the parents. And then with respect to middle school mental health, just some brief descriptive statistics. 24.4% of middle school respondents said they had poor mental health fairly often or very often within the last 30 days. And a third of middle school respondents also said they felt sad, angry, or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row, that they stopped doing some of their usual activities. And this was within the past year. And then some disparities, statistics. 13.2% is the percentage of respondents who identify as bisexual among those who said they had poor mental health fairly often or very often within the last 30 days. And 54.4% is the percentage of cisgender girls among those who said that they had poor mental health fairly often or very often within the last 30 days. And then when we were looking at some common stressors, the top 3 common stressors that students often reported were school issues, which could be grades, exams, that type of thing, 48.8%, appearance issues, 40.7%, and then social issues like dating, making friends, that type of thing, that was 28.2%. And then there was also some expressed interest around looking at social ties and happiness at school on mental health. So students who feel that they don't feel as close to people at their school are 6.1 times more likely to experience poor mental health most of the time or always within the last 30 days compared to those who agree that they do feel very close to people at their school. And students who disagree or strongly disagree that they are happy to be at their school are 3 to 5 times more likely to experience poor mental health most of the time or always compared to those who strongly agree that they're happy to be at their school. But then some important protective factors were identified after looking at these questions, which is that students who have a parent, guardian, or adult family member to talk to about topics that are important to them are 68% less likely to experience poor mental health outcomes in the last 30 days compared to those who have no trusted adult to talk to at all. And students who have a healthy coping activity or skill they can turn to for stress relief, so like listening to music, meditation, going out for a walk, they're 20% less likely to experience poor mental health in the last 30 days compared to those who don't have a healthy coping activity for stress relief. And now for the high school, the demographic characteristics shift a little bit, but not that much. Again, over 90% of the students identify as cisgendered. And you still have a very small minority of people who identify as non-binary or gender non-conforming. And then when we move to sexual orientation, again, majority of students identify as straight or heterosexual, but you have a slightly bigger chunk of the pie that encompasses people who identify as bisexual, gay or lesbian, other, which is a sort of umbrella option for pansexual, asexual, anything else that's not encompassed by the survey. 3.7% said that they were questioning their sexual orientation, and 4.4% refused to answer this question. And then with respect to ethnicity, 83.8% said that they were not Hispanic. Race, again, you have a majority white cohort. 8.6% said that they were multiracial, 7.6% said they were other, 2.7% said that they were Black or African American, 2% said they were Asian American Pacific Islander, and this time only 1% said that they were American Indian or Alaskan Native. And this time, since we're in the high school, the majority of respondents were between the ages of 15 and 18 years old. And then with language spoken at home, majority of participants or respondents spoke English. So for the descriptive statistics for the high school, I have both lifetime use and use within the last 30 days. So among the high school students, 32.4% said that they have used marijuana at some point in their lifetime. Within the last 30 days of taking the survey, 20.4% of students said they have used marijuana. And when asked about what age they started using marijuana, 43.4%, the majority of people who gave this answer said that they were 13 or 14 years old. So for this question, when it asked at what age did you start using, different options were available, like 12 or 11 or 12, 13 or 14, 15 or 16, etc. So 13 or 14 was the most popular answer for that one. And then for some disparity statistics, 9.8 is the percentage of respondents who identify as Hispanic or Latino who have smoked marijuana in the last 30 days. 18% is the percentage of those who identify as bisexual among those who have smoked marijuana in the last 30 days. And 28.6% is the percentage of those who have smoked marijuana in the last 30 days among those who identify as non-binary or gender non-conforming. And a lot of the statistical analyses for the high school cohort were they turned out to be more statistically significant compared to the middle school students. So respondents who think that half the students in their grade are smoking marijuana are 9 times more likely to use marijuana themselves compared to those who do not think any of the students in their grade are smoking marijuana. And respondents who said that they feel their parents think it's wrong to use marijuana are 91% less likely to use marijuana themselves compared to those who feel that their parents think it's not wrong to do so. And then with alcohol consumption, 41.7% of high school respondents said that they have consumed alcohol at some point in their lifetime. 28.7% of respondents said they have consumed alcohol within the last 30 days. And again, 13 or 14 years old was the most commonly answered age group for start or for the age at start of use, which was 37.7%. And then 10.2% of those who identify as multiracial, it's the percentage among those who have consumed alcohol in the last 30 days. 14.2 is the percentage of those who identify as bisexual among those who have consumed alcohol at any point in their lifetime. And 23.1% is the percentage of those who have consumed alcohol in the last 30 days among those who are non-binary or gender non-conforming. And then again, we see social norms and perception of use really affect respondents' lifetime use. So respondents who think that half the students in their grade are more than half the students in their grade are consuming alcohol are 8 times more likely to consume alcohol themselves compared to those who do not think any of the students in their grade have consumed alcohol in the last 30 days. This was a statistically significant finding, but with parental influence, it was not statistically significant, but nonetheless important. Respondents who said that they feel their parents think it's very wrong to consume alcohol are 54% less likely to consume alcohol themselves compared to those who feel their parents think it's not wrong to do so. And then finally, for e-cigarettes and vape, 29.4% of high school respondents said that they used e-cigarettes and vape at some point in their lifetime. 19% said that they've used e-cigarettes or vape in the last 30 days. And 25% of respondents said they started using e-cigarettes or vape when they were 13 or 14 years old. And then 8.9% is the percentage of those who identify as multiracial who have used e-cigarettes or vape in the last 30 days. And 21% is the percentage of those who identify as bisexual among those who used e-cigarettes and vape in the last 30 days. And this time we have a bit of a wider spread in terms of what types or combinations of e-cigarettes or vape are used, and also how these e-cigarettes or vape were acquired. So the vast majority of students usually use e-cigarettes or vape as combinations of marijuana, tobacco, and flavored tobacco. Otherwise, flavored tobacco or nicotine is the second most common type of e-cigarette or vape that's used. And then the majority of high school respondents said they got them from a family member, a friend, or someone else. Otherwise, the second most popular way was they got them some other way, which again could be social media. And again, the influence of parents and friends has a statistically significant impact on lifetime use among students. So respondents who feel that their parents think it's very wrong to use e-cigarettes or vape are 74% less likely to use themselves compared to those who feel their parents think it's not wrong. And respondents who feel that their friends think it's wrong or it's very wrong to use e-cigarettes or vape are 94% less likely to use themselves compared to, again, their friends, not parents, their friends who feel their parents think it is not wrong to use e-cigarettes or vape. And so in the process of analyzing this data, something that should be noted is that there was a lot of missing responses for some of the substance use questions. Alcohol and marijuana showed the highest amount of missingness. Usually anywhere between 350 and 500 responses were missing for certain questions. For reference, there were 601 students who completed the high school youth behavioral risk factor survey. So why are there so many missing answers? There are two main reasons why. One of them is attributed to the way the survey is constructed. So responses to certain questions allows respondents to automatically skip questions. So if a respondent says to a question earlier on that they have never consumed or used a certain substance at any point in their lifetime, then they're not required to answer any of the other substance use questions later on. But when I continued looking through the missing responses, that still didn't account for all of the missing responses. So the other plausible explanation for this is that respondents do not want to respond to some of these questions. And there is no, I do not want to answer this question option available. And this could be partly attributed to staff and faculty at the schools not really ensuring confidentiality and safety when students take the survey. And so the result of missing this big is that it can introduce systematic error or bias into the analysis. So in epidemiology, what we use are these diagrams or thinking tools called DAGs, directed acyclic graphs, we call them DAGs. They're helpful to think about in the process of designing your research question. They're helpful in the study design phase. They're helpful in developing your analytic strategy. Basically, the point of the DAG is to show, okay, we have this exposure outcome relationship we want to look at. What are some possible variables that might introduce bias into that relationship? What can we account for in the design phase, whether it's designing a study or a questionnaire, and what can we account for in the analysis phase? And so generally, best practice is that you want to minimize as much bias as possible in your study design or questionnaire design. So that way you don't have to worry about it later on, because there's only so much you can do during the data analysis stage once all of the data is collected, for you to minimize the impacts of this bias. But one of the, I think a common type of bias that usually comes up when people think of bias in studies or clinical research or surveys like this is recall bias. Recall bias is one form of a broader type of bias called information bias. And there are multiple different types of information bias, one of them being differential misclassification of the exposure. So we wouldn't really talk about recall bias here, because recall bias refers to the outcome, which is in red over here. We would talk about the outcome influencing the actual exposure versus what's reported on the survey. In this case, we're using differential misclassification of the exposure, since the exposure influences both the outcome and what's reported. So here we can see that underage alcohol consumption is closely implicated with the possible repercussions of underage drinking. And that is related to driving under the influence of alcohol. But also we know the possible repercussions of underage drinking impact how much comfort someone might have in reporting the drinking. And so that ultimately impacts what gets reported on the survey. So sometimes what's reported might not align with what's going on in reality. And so that might be one reason why we're seeing so much missingness. So when I'm analyzing the data, I can run different bias analyses to minimize the impact of this type of bias. But again, it's important to ensure to students who are taking the questionnaire that it is a confidential survey so they can answer as honestly as possible, because that way we can minimize how much, we can minimize how many missing responses we get. So then with high school mental health, 33.2% of respondents said that they have had poor mental health fairly or very often within the last 30 days. 40.6% of respondents said they have felt tense, nervous, or worried every day for 2 or more weeks in a row, just within the last 30 days. And then 37.5% of respondents, it's the percentage of those who have had poor mental health fairly often or very often within the last 30 days among those who identify as Black or American, and 61.8% of cisgender girls or women said they had poor mental health fairly often or very often within the last 30 days. And so the stressors we see among the high school students are the same as those we see in the middle school students, but they're much higher in terms of how widespread or prevalent they are. So stress around school shoots up to 60.4%. Appearance issues goes up to 42.3%, and social issues, which again encompasses like dating, friends, is 37.2%. And we find that students who disagree that they feel close to the people at their school are 7 times more likely to experience poor mental health in the last 30 days compared to those who strongly disagree that they feel close to the people at their school. And students who disagree or strongly disagree that they're happy to be at their school are 8 to 19 times more likely to experience poor mental health most of the time or always in the last 30 days compared to those who strongly agree that they are happy to be at their school. But then some new questions were introduced for the 2022 high school risk factor survey. And so we see that students who do 1 extracurricular activity per week are 19% less likely to experience poor mental health outcomes in the last 30 days compared to those who don't do any extracurriculars at all. And when I was looking at this a little bit more closely, sports actually seem to be the most protective against poor mental health compared to service activities or clubs. And students who have at least one teacher or adult in their school they can talk to about topics that are important to them are 60% less likely to experience poor mental health outcomes compared to those who don't feel like they have a teacher or adult in their school they can talk to. And then this protective effect is more pronounced in the home. Students who feel that they have a mix of family and non-family adults they can talk to about topics that are important, that they can talk to about topics that are important to them are 77% less likely to experience poor mental health outcomes in the last 30 days compared to those who do not feel like they have any adults outside of school to talk to about important topics at all. And students who have healthy coping strategies to deal with stress are 58% less likely to experience poor mental health outcomes compared to those who do not have any healthy coping strategies. So the data can ultimately offer some recommendations on where and how to intervene. So when it comes to substance use, a lot of these recommendations align with the MAPC recommendations, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They gave a presentation in February 2023 about some possible protective factors, and their recommendations align a lot with what's found or with what's been found thus far in the survey. So education and programming for both caregivers and the students themselves are pretty important. So generally you want, in terms of offering recommendations for parental or caregiver education, you want to
How to get to the costumes.
help parents learn how to talk about substance use. So you want to deter from the scare tactics approach. You want to help parents look for signs of youth substance use. And you also want to plug parents into what resources are available in the community in the event they recognize that their kid might be using and they want to steer them away from that. And similarly, when it comes to peer health education, again, you don't want any scare tactics. You only want to share the facts. And also based on the data that was available, you want to also bolster the presence of clubs, organized activities, and substance-free programming that students can participate in after school. And the Gloucester Youth Leadership Council has already been doing a good job of that. With respect to vaping, cessation trainings led by trusted adults is one helpful way, and cessation tools like mints and fidget spinners can also be helpful in deterring vaping in the longer term among youth. And some of these are already distributed by GYLC. I got one from one of their swag bags. And finally, one other recommendation that came to mind were less punitive approaches to addressing substance use, particularly within the school system. While I didn't share any findings related to sort of trust in an adult and substance use, and I only talked about it in the context of mental health, we know from existing literature that students who feel like they have a trusted adult to talk to, including adults at school, like their teachers or guidance counselors, who can talk about things that are important to them. It may not necessarily be that they're less likely to use, but at least they might be more immediately guided towards appropriate resources and programs that could deter them from using illicit substances in the longer term, as opposed to using sort of these punishment tactics like detention or suspension or expulsion, something that penalizes them and doesn't really take care of the problem in the longer term. And then when it comes to intervening with respect to mental health, it can be help. One recommendation that comes to mind is teaching youth how to healthily cope with certain types of stressors, like positive and tolerable stressors versus toxic stressors. Amy Cam has a mental health ambassadors program that she's launched. I don't know if it's something that will be launched or if it's something already in motion, but the point of the program is that you want to use a peer health education model so that students can recognize warning signs of emotional distress so that they can teach their peers how to cope with common stressors like things related to school, and then how to also bring fellow students to the appropriate resources, whether it's another adult in the school or something like that, to make sure that their peers are connected with the appropriate resources for them. And the reason why I talk about like this framing of stress is because stress is something, it's a signal that you need to adapt and change in order to accommodate or deal with the stressor. And so in some cases, stress can be a healthy thing. Most of the time it can actually be a good thing. It's just when the stress is chronic, that's when it becomes problematic. So positive stress, for example, it's something short term. It helps us learn how to adapt and grow. So situations that cause positive stress can be good or bad. In the case of school, it can be sitting for an exam, giving a presentation like this. And these stressors usually happen multiple times a day. Tolerable stress is something still short term, but the type of stressor is a little more severe. So it can be the death of a family member, it can be parents getting a divorce, something like that. And it can have it's something that can happen multiple times throughout your life, and it's something that is possible to cope with as long as the social support is robust. The main type of stressor that is really detrimental to health over time, both mental health and physical health, namely when we're talking about like cardiovascular outcomes and cardiometabolic outcomes, toxic stress is prolonged and extreme stress. So think about like adverse childhood experiences like abuse, neglect, and violence. Racism has also been previously talked about as a type of toxic stress. And this is the main type of stressor that can be really detrimental to health. But since most students talked about things like school, their appearance, or social life is the top 3 stressors, there are healthy ways to cope with it. And so it would just be more of a matter of peer health education approaches that can talk about how to reframe the idea of stress as something that can be, or learning how to adapt to stress is a skill that can be beneficial in the longer term, instead of something that really brings people down. And then finally, the last recommendation I have for mental health is just tailoring resources or responses by mental health professionals to different types of stress and to specific populations. So like I said, for positive or tolerable stressors, we want to improve mental health literacy, coping mechanisms, and peer education. For toxic stressors, you want to ensure that appropriate resources are available and to ensure that they're culturally cognizant. And one example I have is for LGBTQ+ mental health. The Justice Resource Institute offers free counseling for young people. And I think since Unity is affiliated with the JRI, they do offer additional counseling and mental health support as well. And then finally, next steps for my last week. I'll wrap up the 1-pager so it can be distributed to the Board of Health, any other key stakeholders Chelsea and the prevention team might be interested in sharing this information with. And then I'll be looking at some of these other variables over the next week since I finally have the code worked out. So adverse childhood experiences, caregiver behaviors around substance use, sleep and nutrition and their impacts on mental health and so on. But yeah, that's it. So thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Janine. That was terrific. That was very comprehensive presentation. One take home that I noticed was that it confirmed the nationwide issue with mental health in the schools. Did you look at previous year's data regarding mental health of the students? And how does this year's data compare?
I don't have access. I think the last time this survey was distributed, and Chelsea can correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been 2019, the last time this survey was distributed, so it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I don't have access to the 2019 data. What I can say from the national statistics is that usually among youth, the mental health outcomes have gotten worse. And then when it comes to the literature around substance use among youth from 2020 onward, the literature is a bit mixed because there are a lot of systematic reviews and reports, particularly at the national level, that say that substance use among youth has decreased since COVID happened. But then other articles suggest that it has increased. So I think it's context specific and population specific. So that one is more of a mixed bag. But I don't have, I'm not able to say how much this has changed since the 2019 survey. Maybe Chelsea might have some more insight about that.
I could just briefly say that rates of mental health issues have increased since the 2019 survey. And that's true for Gloucester, but also nationwide. Gloucester is not an outlier in that. And I do think rates of substance use decreased as in 2022 as compared to 2019. But again, as Janine mentioned, we have to think about the context in which the survey was administered, and it was during the pandemic when access to substances and access to situations where substances may be consumed like a party were very different than they had been in 2019. So
I also noticed that access to flavored tobacco seemed to be quite prevalent, even though they're illegal. So they're obviously coming from the internet or some other sources.
Janine, what Janine alluded to, potentially purchasing flavored tobacco online or through social media, which anecdotally we've heard from a lot of students and adults who work with students that it's unfortunately not super difficult to buy flavored tobacco, like flavored vapes online and get them delivered. So you can purchase them out of state. You can do it through Snapchat, TikTok. So it's very prevalent.
Any other comments, questions?
One of the takeaways from this is that positive peer pressure seems to decrease vaping and alcohol use, and the same thing with family seems to have a pretty big impact, even if it's not a huge amount, it's still some. I think that's one of the ways that maybe you could do some specific work with teens.
That's what we're hoping for. And again, thank you so much, Janine, because we would not be able to do what we'd like to do without your skill set and expertise and willingness to do this project. So thank you. I will say we intend to use this data in a multitude of ways, but one of the ways we'd like to use the data is doing some kind of positive community norms campaign that's youth-led, that looks at actual use versus perception of use and correcting the misperception. So kids tend to overestimate the number of their peers that are using substances, and the data shows it's typically much less than what they perceive. So identifying and correcting the misperceptions can have a really positive impact. And the schools are super on board and want to work with us and are already doing a ton to support their students. So I want to just be really clear, I've said this before, but the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is administered in the schools because that's where kids are. But the issues that are identified are often happening outside of school. So there may be some data that seems startling or worrisome, and we as a health department have an equal role in addressing those issues in partnerships with the school. So it's not a school problem to fix, it's a community problem to address. And the schools are again doing a ton of work to support the mental health of their students. The Mental Health Ambassadors Program is running. It has been running for at least the past year and it's continuing. So they're doing lots of really great work, including some implementing restorative practices in the schools to move away from discipline and punitive approaches and more towards the supportive resource heavy, I guess, approaches if a student has an infraction for substance use in school. So I just want to say that, but like, this is not the school's issue, this is our issue, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with them.
No, well said. That needs to be said. Thank you. Anything else? No, thanks again, Janine.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you, Janine.
I think someone online had a question.
Oh.
I don't have anybody with a hand raised.
Okay.
It was Torsen, I think.
I didn't mean to, but I do want to say thanks for that presentation and all your research. That was really, really well done.
Okay, thank you. Never mind. I thought there was a question.
So unless there's anything else to add to that, we'll move on to concerns of the board. Anything that's not on the agenda that you want to bring to our attention, not for discussion, but just notice?
I was sorry to hear they closed the creek again.
Well, it rained.
Exactly. It's gonna happen again tonight.
Yeah. Nothing? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thor.
Aye.
Mark, aye.
Joe, aye.
Eric, aye.
Gloria.
Dawn, aye.
Don, thank you. We don't see you anymore.
That's right.
So next meeting, we will have a director sitting here. Won't that be nice? And that is, it's the second week in September.
Second week in
I think.
September.
Yeah. You don't
Second
want to
Tuesday,
conflict
second
with,
Thursday of the month.
Hi, Don.
Dawn's-
Looks like he's in outer space.
He is, he's weightless.
He's floating now.
Oh, we have a bunch of things that we need to say. Is it just one thing or a bunch of things that are here?
Just that last
The-
meeting's tobacco regulations that we
Tobacco
voted on.
regulations, we have
We
to
just need
sign.
signatures.
Sign.
So I think we can sign off and end the meeting and then do your signatures, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
The meeting is ended, so. Is it?